What is going on, gunfighters? Welcome back to Gunfighter Life, the podcast where we talk about gunfighting the right way, with Judeo-Christian values and real-world first-hand experience. A special shout-out today to all the Marines out there. This is the Marine Corps birthday. This is when this episode is getting recorded. It won't be put out for some time, but I thought give a special shout-out to the fellow Marines out there. Today, we're going to be talking about P.D.Ws, personal defense weapons. They kind of live in their own little in-between world. They're not a pistol, they're not a rifle, they're a P.D.W. That's what we're going to talk about today. If this is not your first rodeo with us here, I'd appreciate you supporting the podcast. Step one of that, just go to goodshepherdtraining.com and check out what we have there. The number one way is to become a patron. There's also a Venmo link on there. Anyway, for the fraction of the cost of a box of ammo, you can support this podcast. Hopefully you think you get at least a box worth of ammo knowledge out of this episode and plenty throughout the month. Anyway, with that, I will mention that through the month of November, we're doing a Patreon giveaway. So all new patrons will be entered in a raffle to get a K-Bar folding hunter knife. Very good piece of EDC kit and graciously offered up by one of the current patrons. So if you're thinking about becoming a patron, this month might be the month to do it. If you have it as a conviction, I hope you step up and do it. Anyway, enough about that. I'm going to plug in the bio and then we'll get into the topic on PDWs. If you want to skip it, skip around 3 minutes and 45 seconds. Who am I? A question we should all ask ourselves. I am, first and foremost, a servant of God, made in His very own image, a follower of Jesus Christ, a simple man called by God to the Great Commission to share the good news of Jesus Christ. Next, a little bit about my background and what God has allowed me to do and bless me to do in life. Grew up what most would consider very poor in the backwoods of the southeastern and mid-Atlantic United States, hunting and fishing. Joined the Marine Corps at 17. Did a couple of combat tours in Iraq. So a decorated Marine Corps combat veteran. Infantry assaultman. After the combat tours, I was an urban warfare instructor for the United States Marine Corps under Mojave Viper. I also served in the U.S. Army, both full-time and part-time National Guard. Also a veteran of law enforcement. I served with LAPD. I was a sworn peace officer, a cop for LAPD. I worked regular patrol assignments and more specialized assignments. One of those more specialized assignments was warrant service, fugitive recovery. Also had some other law enforcement roles. I am an FBI certified firearms instructor and been certified by another 3-letter government agency in a lot of firearms and training things. I've also been a private contractor, worked in the private sector, pertaining to tactics and gunfighting and protecting America from enemies foreign and domestic. I served as the commander of a tactical team to stop active shooters in a large metropolitan area. That was our primary mission, to stop active shooters, which sadly are a thing in America today. I've also been blessed to do quite a bit of competition shooting. Started my first formal competitions even before joining the Marine Corps at 17. I had won more shooting competitions than I can remember. I have competed in all manner of disciplines in shooting. I've been blessed to be a state rifle and pistol champion, West Coast regional champion. Like I said, been blessed to win more shooting competitions than I can remember. Mentioned hunting. I've hunted to put meat on the table. Starting when I was a child, I've also been a professional big game hunter and guide, hunting and slaying all manner of beast. And I don't apologize for that. Humbled to be the host of 3 podcasts. Simple Man Sermons, Alpha Male Podcast, and Gunfighter Life. Obviously, as things not mentioned, I've been blessed to do many other things. But, again, first and foremost, I'm a servant of God, a believer and follower of the Bible, the Word, Jesus Christ. And I don't apologize for that. With that, let's transition into today's topic. So let's talk about PDWs. Now, I first want to say, whatever you arm yourself with, your primary weapon should be the sword of the Spirit, which is the Word of God. That is more important. No matter how many fights you win or lose, one day we'll stand. I should say one day every knee shall bow. We'll give an account for the things we have done. So keep the things that are really important ahead of the things that are not so important. Don't fear the person who can kill the body and after that has no more that they can do. Fear him who can destroy the body and after that has the power to cast you into hell. But Jesus did tell his disciples to have swords. Yes, he did, and I get flack for that. I recently got pushed back from that on one of the social media platforms, saying that my message should be peaceful. Well, I hope to preach the same message that Jesus preached. And Jesus told his disciples to have swords. Sword was the go-to main battlefield implement of the day. And if we're talking about a Roman short sword, a gladius, we're talking about, I would dare call that a personal defense weapon and an offensive weapon. Anyway, enough about that. Let's get into PDWs, why you might want one. Well, perhaps it is not practical for you to have one go-to rifle that you have with you all the time. Perhaps for any number of reasons. You have to take some form of public transportation. You can't just carry a giant rifle bag. It's a red flag. Not everybody gets to live out in the country or live remotely. Some people have to spend time quite a ways away from their vehicle or from a place where they could have a full-size rifle. Perhaps all they can have without raising an eyebrow is a laptop bag or a sling bag or a backpack. For those type of people, the PDW might make a lot of sense, and for many others, for the professional who they were designed for, of which I've done that type of work, as you might surmise from my bio. I have done personal protection details and protected A-list celebrities and work with the Secret Service and things like that. I have done that. And for that type of mission, there is a place for the PDW. That's kind of one of the main things they're supposed to be good at. So I think you should have a go-to rifle, and this is not to replace that, and I think that you should have a go-to fighting handgun, your EDC handgun, your fighting handgun, as a base. The PDW for some people may be more of what they use day to day because they just can't practically carry. Perhaps they have to walk a long way and leave their car in a parking garage, and gunfights generally happen quickly. A PDW that you can have on you, for that person, may make more sense day to day than a full-size rifle. So let's talk about some options for PDWs. Now the first options I'm going to espouse to you may be guns that you already have that we don't really think about as being able to be compact and small. But a lot of guns can be made small. The AR-15 has down pins, right? You can take that sucker down. You're talking about your just regular M4 16-inch barrel plus the length of the receiver. You can take the lower off of that with those quick detach pins or just the regular pins and greatly reduce the size of that. Quick tactical tip, take an old tube sock, cut the other end off so both ends are hollow, throw an end on the bolt carrier group end and throw an end on the lower receiver end to keep dirt out, twist them, fold them together and throw them in a pack. The AR-15 can certainly be a takedown gun, and if you have, as we're going to talk about a little bit later, a small AR pistol, you can make it even smaller. There are weapons like that you can fit into a pack, a sling bag that's not so big that it screams, I have a rifle in here. And for that kind of person that we talked about earlier, that might be just a ticket. Also, most pump actions and semi-auto shotguns that don't get a lot of love in the tactical world, most of those can be takedown guns. Most of them, the vast majority, have a simple hand tightenable and ability to take off nut on the front of the magazine tube. You take that off, you pull the barrel off, and you have a takedown gun. It's that simple. Takedown guns don't have to be for, the MacGyver 007 types. Your generations old 870, Mossberg 500, Maverick 88, that's a takedown gun. I had some spy in a movie doing that on a rooftop, taking it out of a bag and screwing it together. You'd be like, oh, that's so cool. But pretty much every modern shotgun does that. So that may be an option for you. Care less about what's Instagrammy and cool as opposed to what's practical and what's actually going to keep you alive. And a good shotgun that can be taken down has a lot of merit for a lot of reasons I've talked about in other podcasts about the shotgun. But that can certainly be a takedown gun. So keep that in mind. You may not have to go out and spend a bunch of money. You may already have something that fits this role that you can use in this role. And again, this should not take the place of your everyday carry gun, your CCW gun. Because if you need it right now. You may be in a situation where having a little bit more firepower in a pack could be handy. Again, you're a long distance away from your POV, your privately owned vehicle. You have to use public transportation, or who knows, any number of things, right? Where you want to be the gray man, if you want to use a tactical concept. But let's just say you want to blend in, right? So being the gray man's all about. Now let's get into more specific actual PDW type weapons. Throw out a couple of, let's call them retro PDW weapons you can actually own. A classic. It's affordable. It's effective. The Kel-Tec Sub 2K. They're not expensive. You can get them to take Glock mags and a couple of other mags if you're not a Glockophile. But they take reliable, prevalent mags. They fold in half. They are light, they are handy, and they don't break the bank. And they will fit into a lot of those kind of gray man type bags that we've talked about. A decent sized sling bag that a lot of people carry all the time. You don't get one that's all multicam and look like the Molly monster vomited on it, then you should blend in just fine. And you can have a Kel-Tec Sub 2K in there. It's a decent upgrade in firepower from, let's say, the most ubiquitous and probably most common single model of handgun, the Glock 19. And you could have it to take the same exact mags. There's a lot of advantage to that, having a couple of extra mags in that bag with that gun, and maybe even a 33 round mag. Kel-Tec Sub 2K, it's a classic, it's light, it's handy, and I'm not going to knock it because it's affordable. It's a decent gun. I have to imagine if Daniel Defense made it and introduced it as the DD2K and charged $3,000 for it, people will be clamoring over it. But just because it's been around a while and it's affordable doesn't make it not a good option. It's a good, affordable option. And one of my patrons will be really happy that I said that because he loves the Sub 2K. Anyway, it's a cool gun. Now let's talk about what I'm going to recommend, because it's what I use and did use as a go-to duty gun when I was doing these kinds of things professionally, and that's an AR pistol, air quotes. We're talking about one with a pistol brace. You say, well, why wouldn't you go full SBR? Well, because for work and for my semi-nomadic lifestyle, I travel a lot. And if you don't know, even if you legally go through all the hassle of getting a legit SBR short barrel rifle, which is an NFA item, you have to get permission by the ATF sleeve if you transfer state to state. I might go several states in one mission. So that's kind of a no-go, especially if it's a last-minute thing. You have to get permission for those things when you cross state lines, and a lot of people may not know that. So for me, I think the AR pistol is a better option just for that reason alone. Now, if you live in Texas and Central Texas and you almost never go outside of Texas, and when you do, you only carry a handgun when you fly, then maybe the SBR is the right route for you. But for me, who travels a lot and things like that, the AR pistol makes a lot of sense. The AR pistol, you do give up some ballistics in going to such a short barrel. I would not recommend anything shorter than an 11.5. If you can get an 11.5, I think going crazy short with a 5.56 chambering you lose more than you gain at a certain point, and I think that point's about 11.5 inches, just with the way the gas system works, and going from a carbine length, which is fairly proven, to a pistol length, which is less proven. And ammo selection is critical for this. Super high velocity on a 5.56 round can be devastating out of a 20-inch barrel, but ballistics change a lot going from a 20-inch barrel to an 11-inch barrel. I'm not going to nerd out on those numbers, but be judicious in your ammo selection. This is probably not the place for FMJs or your XM193 or your M855. Do some due diligence and figure out what works in your gun and what actually is above the expansion threshold for your rifle in that caliber. I'll give you some recommendations that I have used over the years that I really like. Doesn't mean it's going to work for your gun. You got to test your ammo out of your gun fired by you. I like the Federal Tactical Rifle Urban, Federal True, TRU. It stands for Tactical Rifle Urban. Great round. I also like the Hornady, I think it's the Freedom 55 grain hollow point boat tail match, and they do expand out of my short barrel. I've tested it on, well, let's just say I've tested it and it works. That is and has been my go-to, a AR pistol. And I'm not going to give you brands and recommendations or whatever. Get one that's been around, get one that's been proven. If you're going to trust your life to it, as fun as it is to build ARs, I would recommend going with a completed, at least upper, from a manufacturer with a decent warranty. And it doesn't have to be super expensive. And although Frankenstein ARs can be cool, and trying to build something to the lowest bidder in ARs and waiting for bargain parts can be a lot of fun, I don't think that should be your go-to P.D.W. If it's just a fun range gun as a P.D.W., knock yourself out. If you're going to trust your life to it, don't skimp on that, and my advice is get something that's been proven, something that works. And then test your exact serial numbered one yourself. And again, I would recommend an 11.5. I wouldn't go super short if I'm staying 5.56. The next thing we're going to talk about is similar, but different. So it's going to be that same kind of AR type pistol, but in a PCC, in a pistol caliber. So you're basically taking the AR platform and putting it in a pistol caliber. Why might you want to do that? Well, because maybe you want better ergonomics and more modularity and things than you get from that Kel-Tec Sub 2K. You can still get plenty of these that take Glock mags. You get that same commonality we talked about if you in fact carry a Glock or something like it. And a lot of these are not direct impingement like the AR pistols are going to be, which means they have a completely different operating system, so you in general don't get the same gas issues if it's a proven system that you get with going really short on a 5.56. Plus you have a massive amount of unburnt powder if you go to like a 7 or a 9-inch barrel in a 5.56. However, if you get a 9mm, which is designed to be fired out of, let's say, a 5-inch barrel, which is probably generous, most are probably 4 or 4.5, but designed to be fired out of that length barrel, and you extend that to 7, now you're getting better ballistics. So there's an argument to be made there for the PCC or the AR pistol, really short, really handy, and that type of configuration. Also, you can mount optics. Now, I know a lot of pistols you can mount optics, but there's a far cry between a pistol with an optic, which I really love, and one of these little P.D.W. type weapons with a big optic and 3 points of contact. Depending on the system, a lot of these you can fold the buttstocks on to make them even smaller. But anyway, that'd be my next choice. And again, I'm not going to... There's so many models and so many brands. Pick one that's got a proven track record. My general rule, if I'm going to trust my life to something, I like it to have been out and tested for 3 years. Lots of good companies come out with the new model that has issues. I don't want to be a beta tester in a gunfight. So get a proven model. The other thing I'm going to talk about are these pistol conversions. You basically take the serialized part of your pistol or the fire control group in the case of the 320, and you drop it in a chassis, and you get this quasi-Frankenstein carbine. That's not really a carbine because that has a pistol brace on it. The Roni was kind of the first real popular one. There are several others now, and I've never owned one of these because I said my go-to for this is a AR pistol. However, again, go with one that's proven. Do your due diligence on the research. At this point, you're kind of getting to the point where, is it better than a handgun? Yeah, maybe, but by how much? But I still think they may have a place. So that's definitely an option for your P.D.W. We also have our built from the ground up, what we think of as our classic submachine guns, but that we can only have in semi-auto, like your mp5, your mp5k, the SIG, or as I was, the CZ Scorpion, which is kind of one of the original ones of these. That's super cool, but you can't really have them. I'm talking about a dedicated submachine gun that's not actually a submachine gun. So your mp5 or your mp5 clones, there's a ton of clones of those. Or another real popular one is your CZ Scorpion. It's a pretty cool platform. CZ makes good stuff. They've been around a few years now, but a dedicated, built from the ground up from a legit manufacturer to be a small, handy, pistol round firing, shoulderable weapon. These are pretty cool. They have a place. Whether they have a place with you or not, I'm not sure. You have to do your due diligence on that. Kind of the next gen of these are the ones designed for the 5.7. For a while, it was only the PS90. You can get the civilian version of that with the long barrel. It's still pretty short because it's a bullpup. It fires a 5.7 round. It has 50 round magazines on top. They're a cool gun. I would say if you are going to do this, you better train with it a lot, because the manual of arms and even the stance and everything else is far different from most normal guns. For that reason alone, I would stick with an AR pistol. However, if you want to go that route, it is a formidable weapon. You may have to only have whatever small bag you can carry day to day and get stuck and have a long ways to travel on foot. 5.7 round is super light. You can carry a lot of it without a lot of weight. And having that with the 50 round mags would not be a bad thing. Again, I said for a while it was just a PS90. There are some really cool uppers. Do your research again. Make sure that it's proven. Don't get the latest, greatest one that just came out that people are saying is awesome. Get the one that's been around a while that's been proven to be awesome. But there's a lot of AR uppers. I shouldn't say a lot. There are several AR uppers in 5.7. Some different and unique. Some take pistol mags. Some take the actual PS90 mags and feed out of the bottom of the magwell, which is pretty cool. Anyway, do your due diligence on these. But they certainly could be an option. That was what that round, the 5.7, was designed for. I don't know how good a pistol round it is, but I do know it's a fair round with, again, good ammo selection in a P.D.W. and a P.D.W. length barrel, because that's what it was designed for. I know they also made it in a handgun, but that cartridge was designed for a P.D.W. So I think it shines the most in a P.D.W. role. So the 5.7, if you're going to look at it, I think that's where it shines the brightest, in that P.D.W. role. What do you need on your P.D.W.? You may decide nothing, but a few things you might want: a sling, which could literally be just a piece of 550 cord. Literally, when I was running my AR in this guise as a P.D.W., I literally had a piece of, not like a 550 cord Gucci sling, like a piece of 550 cord as a sling. Because it generally lived in a discreet bag. If I had to use it, it's not like I was going to be rucking for tens of miles with this thing. In a vehicle and hopping out, or I was staged, let's just say, in an urban environment in case something went down, it was mostly living in a bag. And if I had to grab it out, I wanted the sling so that nobody could take it from me, shoot me with my own weapon. Or if I needed my hands to take somebody into custody or something like that, just so I could drop it. Literally, a piece of 550 cord for a long time sufficed on that as a sling. But you should maybe have some kind of sling, even if it's just a piece of 550 cord. And you might consider a white light on this gun. And an optic, you're talking P.D.W. I don't see any reason to go with anything other than your standard irons, if you're good with irons. If you want a red dot, I would get a red dot. Whether or not I had a red dot, I would have backup iron sights. However, I can't think of any reason why I would want anything other than irons or a red dot on a P.D.W. A P.D.W. is not a recce rifle. A P.D.W. is not a sniper rifle. A P.D.W. has this small, narrow application, which we've talked about, which for some of you may be a legit day-to-day application. You have to park your car in a parking garage and walk literally a mile in an urban environment to spend 8 hours of your day in a cubicle. And if there's an active shooter, the idea of you being able to get to your vehicle and back is, you might as well be on the moon, right? For something like that, this may be a real application. In these kind of real-world scenarios, I don't see any need for anything other than iron sights or a red dot with backup irons. Alright, so Episode on the P.D.W. mainly wrapped up. Normally I do a tactical tip of the day. One of the patrons asked for something, and since they support the podcast, I hope to help them out. I don't know that I could do a whole episode on it, but they wanted me to explain the difference between direct impingement, long stroke gas piston, and short stroke gas piston. I don't know how well this is going to do on audio, but we're going to give it a shot. Now, let me start off with the caveat that we call the AR direct impingement. Technically, it's not. As I understand it, and I'm not an engineer, the bolt would actually be the piston, but let's call that direct impingement because that's the vernacular that everybody knows it by today. So, basically, if you've ever looked at your AR, you got the barrel and you got the gas tube on top. There's a hole drilled in the barrel, the gas tube's connected to it. And if you ever played that game as a kid when you're sitting at a restaurant, Pizza Hut, whatever, and you tear off half the part of your straw. Don't worry, I'm going somewhere with this. You know the straws you get, your drinking straws? You tear off half of it and you blow the rest of the wrapper off the end of the straw. That's basically exactly what's happening with your AR gas tube and your bolt. If you look at your bolt when you clean your AR, it fits literally over that gas tube like the end of that straw. Paper fits over that straw. When the gas comes down the barrel, it literally makes that thing fly backwards, just like you're blowing on that straw. The only difference is there's a spring on the other end, which is inside the buffer tube, that shoves it back. But that same principle applies. That gas is shoving that bolt back. And again, the bolt is actually the piston, but we'll call it direct impingement because that's what most people know it by. Now let's talk about short stroke gas piston. The way I would liken this is like your classic AK, and most modern guns that aren't ARs, I think, are short stroke gas piston. If this works, that gas still comes off the barrel, but instead of going down a long hollow tube, it pushes back a piston, a piece of metal. This piece of metal strikes usually a bolt or an operating rod. It strikes something and forces it back, but it only hits it briefly and shortly. That's why it's called a short stroke. If you think of this like boxers. Think of this like punching somebody in the face and their head immediately snaps back and then it comes forward, right? Short stroke gas piston. You punch something, it flies back and then it comes back. For a long stroke, that thing is going to push it all the way back. So the piston, the fist, is going to stay in contact with the object. Think about this like you grab somebody you're fighting, and instead of punching them, you shove them back and then pull them back forward. So that piston, your arms, your hands, your fist, after you grab them, is traveling with them back and then traveling with them forward. As opposed to the short stroke where you punch somebody, you still impart that force, but it flies back and then it comes back on its own. That piston doesn't go all the way with it. Anyway, that's kind of the analogy I can use for those different type of operating systems. As best I can do in an audio format. I thought about this for quite a while. Hopefully that helps. Instead of a tactical tip for the day, consider that your tactical period of instruction. In the military, we'd kind of call that a hip pocket class. But anyway, hopefully you enjoyed that. Hopefully it made sense. And if you already knew it, thanks for staying tuned. Hopefully what you've all been waiting for, the tactical verse of the day. It's a classic tactical verse of the day today. 2 Samuel 22, for by you I can run against a troop, by my God I can leap over a wall. As for God, his way is perfect. The word of the Lord is proven. He is a shield to all who trust in him. For who is God except the Lord? And who is rock except our God? God is my strength and power. He makes my way perfect. He makes my feet like the feet of a deer and sets me on high places. He teaches my hands to make war, so that my arms can bend a bow of bronze. You have also given me the shield of your salvation. Your gentleness has made me great. You enlarged my path under me, so my feet did not slip. I have pursued my enemies and destroyed them. Neither did I turn back again until they were destroyed. Pretty awesome piece of scripture there. With that, men, thanks for listening and have a blessed day.